Hi everyone, and welcome to our presentation. It's great to be with you this afternoon to share with you about digital Matapopore. My name's Tim Cross, and I'm joined by my colleague Isaac Carter.
Kia ora.
What we're going to do to start, I've asked Isaac if he could share an opening karakia.
He karakia tīmatanga. Kia tau I te whānau. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa pauna me te moana, hei huarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei. Aroha mai, aroha ātou, tātou ia tātou katoa. Kui e tai ki e. Kia ora. Back to you, Tim.
Kia ora, Isaac. Just to share, this presentation is going to be a conversation between Isaac and me about Rāraunga Māori Matapopore. And we're going to talk more about that in the conversation. We invite you to put your questions into the chat. We're going to have our conversation through till 1:30. So please feel free to ask questions during that time. And we'll have 15 minutes at the end to answer your questions. What we're going to do now is share pepeha. So
Kia ora tā.
to you, Isaac.
Thank you. Ko maunga pohatu, ko matawhāra te maunga, ko rangi taki te awa, ko rangi po te wehinga o te tona, ko roto I te roto ihu me roto mā ngā moana, ko mātātua ko te aroa te waka, ko mātātua ko tapu hārauru ngā marae, ko te uruwera ko tamatia tūtahi kāweti, ngā hapu, ko Ngāti Manawa, Ngāti Pekea me ngai tūhoi, te iwi. Ko Richard toku pāpa, ko Tana toku māma, ko Isaac Carter toku ingoa no Kāpiti I ahau. He kaitohu maramatanga pakahi I ahau. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Over to you, Tim, for your pepeha. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaac. Kia ora tātou. Ko mau te maunga, te rune, tāku nākau. Ko wairoa te awa. E mahia nei, aku maharahara. O Coolen Park, e ru nei, tāku nākau. O tauranga o, I tipu ake me noho ana o ki otamotai. Ko tēnei tāku mihi, ki ngā tangata whenua, o te rohi nei. O Lawrence toku papa, o Maeve toku mama, o Cross toku whānau, o Tim toku ingoa. Ko te ku nena ki pure hurua te whare wananga. Kua mahi aha, I ahi te reira. Engari, kei te mahi ki Aotearoa I nai anei. E kai whakahaere, a ramatanga a pakahi aha. Tēnā koutou, tēnei rāta tau katoa.
Kia ora. Thank you, Tim.
Awesome. Thank you, Isaac. So what we want to do this afternoon is start a conversation. And what's really important for us is that this is a start of, if it is a start or continuation of conversation that helps us to invest more and understand more about Maori data and expand more and thinking about from our experience. I mean, we're just two people here sharing in conversation, but wanting to encourage more conversation across Aotearoa that can further extend what we're going to share today. And we're very happy to be part of those future conversations. Or to see many more flourish. We're just really keen to see a positive outcome from our time together today. So I guess to start, Isaac, and thinking about digital Matapopore, I guess what is your experience with Maori data, just as a start point for us?
Awesome. I think I'll start with talking about my own experience. So I've worked in a range of different workplaces, a range of different experiences. I started off working for a few different places and then went into an internship, which was pretty much put together called EAF, with the plan of getting Maori and Pasifika into the tech space. And there was a massive need for us in that space. So we went through that. I was then put at Statistics New Zealand and placed there for a year. I worked on a range of different projects. I worked on the Rāraunga Māori project, which is around Maori businesses and SMEs in Aotearoa, and trying to find out how many there are, so we can create policies and things like that alongside government. I also worked with a framework, which was actually created by my mentor, Jacinta Paranahi, and it's called Ngā Tikanga Paihere. And so I worked around understanding and looking at the implementation of it, and then also around a range of different things like presenting it as a taonga and presenting it as beautiful. And Ngā Tikanga Paihere is a framework that works around the implementation of tikanga into projects and into organisations, and how government but non-government can also work alongside Māori respectfully. So that was amazing. I put myself into a space where I had mentors that were constantly teaching me around mātauranga, te reo Māori, te ao Māori, anything that I could get my hands on. So that's more of my experience, and then having quite a hands-on approach with a lot of the Māori data that we were working with at Stats. Now, one of the issues I have faced through that is seeing the need for conversation. There's a massive, I think, opening right now in today's world of Aotearoa, where conversation is so important. And I think these days, if you look back at some of the history of how things have gone, if a conversation was had to be able to understand iwi Māori or local Māori, I think a lot of issues or offence could have been prevented. So yeah, that's some of my experience.
Wow. Now, just touching on what you shared earlier, Isaac, about just in terms of Māori involvement in digital, and the people that you've worked with, is how much are Māori actually connecting into digital in this particular area of data?
Awesome. I think from my own personal experience, I've experienced a lot of different ranges and stages of life. People that are at different stages of their journey into reo te ao Māori, people that are from an older generation, but that have started to pave the way for people in my generation to come through. Now, a lot of these people have different reanga or different ideas or whakaaro around how things are going to go and how implementation should be done. But the one thing they have agreed on is, I guess, paving the way for my generation. So what I'm really passionate about, and what I've started to experience as well, is younger Māori starting to come through and start to, I guess, look at a way that we can come together and build stronger relationships, and wanting to actually see those relationships built with Māori as well. Yeah. Cool. I'd love to ask the same question back around your experience with Māori data.
Thank you. I think the question, it's I guess just to give some context. Isaac and I work for WSP. Yeah. Our focus is very much on infrastructure, and we work within business intelligence. So our focus is very much around systems development, design, visualization of information from data. So we engage with a lot of data from the infrastructure perspective, typically transport, buildings, water and power, and those particular areas, which then I guess we have quite a lot of exposure to fundamental data for operational decision making. And I must say, there is just not anywhere near, I cannot cite any particular fields of data currently within those systems where Māori data is present. And to me, this is it's a question of what kind of business intelligence we can develop for Aotearoa if we do not have this data with which to be able to provide greater context, greater knowledge and understanding prior to any other intelligence generation. And you know, are we building a bridge in a location of significance or not? You know, and what is the visibility and transparency of that information? Because that has impact for everyone who wants to work on And so for us, I think, or for me, and now having you on board in my team, Isaac, it's about us working together to try to generate better business intelligence, much more inclusive and broadly viewed. For the benefit of Aotearoa, we have a lot of national influence and or connection in terms of what systems we work to, and I'm really keen to see how we can develop that further.
Cool, thank you. It's quite clear that you have quite a lot of matauranga ki runga I tēnei kaupapa, so you have a lot of knowledge on this topic. I want to ask how long you've been kind of involved in this space, or how long you've been involved to be able to see the change that needs to take place.
I have over 20 years of experience in facilities management and asset management data review. So I've been through, I guess I've helped to develop many systems for many people over many years. As I shared in my pepeha, I'd spent 3 years in Australia as well, working. But in all cases, it's been a case of data for decision making to improve outcomes for people. And ultimately, we base the quality of our information on the quality of data that we have. And if we simply don't have data with which to be able to generate information, then it is a limitation. And to me, that view of accessibility is a major issue. So actually, in terms of our conversation, that leads really well in terms of our next question. So really, in terms of Māori data accessibility, maybe you can touch on your perspective of Matapopore and provide us with a definition, Isaac.
Yeah. I think for me personally, Matapopore translates quite literally over to the protection of something, or something of high value, or something to be cared for in the right way. So going off there, I think in the space of it being in a data sense, it comes around Māori data, or Rāraunga Māori. And so it becomes around the protection of that and how we add tikanga into things, how we use it to be respectful, and how we do things to be culturally appropriate in the projects and in the things we're doing. Now I think this is always really important to remember what Māori data is, and I think for me personally, there's a lot of arguments around non-government and government and around Aotearoa today around what Māori data actually is. For me, it's information about or of Māori or from Māori, from our cultural practices, from the food we eat, from the places we're in, our whenua, or our tangata, our iwi, everything to do with Māori. So yeah, that's just a little bit of background about, I guess, what Māori data is, and that it should, from my personal point of view, looking into the experience I've had, that it should be treated like a taonga, and that it's important to actually see it as something more than just normal data that can be presented in Aotearoa.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. I think the certainly, like I shared before, accessibility and availability of data is currently a limitation, and ultimately we want to cherish Māori data, and I guess in the way that we manage that, I guess, do you have any thoughts of how we might approach that?
I think it's always important to remember what we're looking at and what Māori data actually is, and I think having an action plan or going forward in that and moving into that is always the way, because I think it's so easy just to say what the problem is and say what's going on, and identifying the issue at hand. But if you're not going forward with that, I think a lot can be missed in the space of identifying and then going forward and moving forward and seeing change for Aotearoa, for the best of Aotearoa.
Cool. Awesome. And that is really where we've come to with our conversation. We've agreed that really we need to have some form of action plan, and that was as we were planning our presentation. I I guess recognizing that there are particular shortfalls in the quality of data that we have, even in looking to the word Matapopore and trying to understand whether there would be Macrons or not visible. And yet, we found one source that did, and many other sources that didn't. So where is that sort of point of reliability? So action is definitely needed.
No, I think that ties on quite well to our action plan as well, and maybe our first step into it. If we want to look through.
So as an overview, our thinking is to approach this from the perspective of education, frameworks, implementation, and conversation. And I think as we talked about it, Isaac, a case of the first three being a little more sequential. But as you shared earlier, conversation being a vital part, right at the beginning, right through these steps, right through to the end, and just always open to conversation.
100%. I think it's the overall factor that needs to be opened up these days, to where conversation shouldn't be something that is feared, but more the next way to go about things, and the next way to see change, because without conversation, relationship won't be built.
Awesome. Okay, so let's touch on each of these points. And first up, education.
Cool. So my personal whakaaro around this is that we had put in reducing the knowledge gap. Now, I think these days there needs to be quite a bit of a humbling system around Aotearoa, where we come from a point of view of wanting to learn. I think a lot of the time with conversations that I had, people can think about wanting to get everything that they wanted to say out without listening and actually learning. I think personally, the way we're going to move forward is by taking that time to identify the people that have the ability to teach, identifying the people that have the ability to take us in through the right processes and show us through the right tikanga. And I think it's about more coming from a humble perspective of, we want to learn. We'd like to come into this with open eyes. We'd like to come into this with a way of, you have so much to teach us, and the only way we're going to be able to get the right tools to grow is by reducing this knowledge gap. And the only way I truly believe that we're going to move forward is to be able to humble ourselves and listen and learn.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think for me personally, still learning te reo, still challenged perhaps, really with pronunciation, and still it's a daily learning. And just really appreciate how you already within our team helped to encourage us within our business intelligence team with our te reo, and just so grateful for that, Isaac. But I know that for many there isn't that accessibility. So for us, really the extension of capability through education, through I guess just thinking about education from the perspective of people outside of school or university, mentorship. Just any other thoughts with regard to reliable sources?
I think my advice, and this is coming from my own personal whakaaro, my own generation, would be to put yourself in the place where you're willing to learn. I think it's a mindset. I truly believe that coming in with a humble mindset is the new way to go about things. I know for myself personally, in my own experience, when I came into this, starting from just out of high school, that I put myself right into a place where I could find mentors that knew my goals, that knew what I wanted to do, and that understood those. I don't think there's any point going to someone who doesn't understand yet if you're wanting to grow in this. But going to someone that is welcoming your ideas, is welcoming your goals and your plans, and saying, look, well, let's work on this together, and let's see how far we can take you. Now, I'm self-taught in te reo. It took me many years to go through that and to process, I guess, teaching myself. But then the way I've been able to uphold that or continue on with that was by my mentors, the people that have stayed close to me, and being able to humble myself and listen to them no matter how they've taught is knowing that there's a plan in place from them, because they are paving the way for us.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think just for all of us, it's a case of what we have established here for our action plan, starting with education, and we'll move into the other points soon, is really a point of accessibility for all of us. This is not just an action plan for certain people or certain academically positioned people or particularly knowledgeable or senior people, decision makers. This is for all of us to get involved and connect and learn and grow and work in partnership together. So yeah, well, please bear this in mind as we're sharing these points. This is very much something that we are learning at the same time, and we just really want to encourage you all to be thinking about these things from your perspective and asking the question of what more you could do.
Got it.
Cool. Okay, so our next point, frameworks.
Cool. So I really enjoyed going through this. I think we had put down guide, not prescribe, and that we recommend community co-design with iwi Māori, if that's the look that you're going for, but it doesn't have to be by sector or by region or by national, but that it can be all three, that it can be a mix between all, whatever is more comfortable. But I really want to touch on the guide, not prescribe. I think it's important to realise that frameworks, in my opinion, are the new way to understanding tikanga for people that haven't had that ability to learn. I think it's also really clear to remember what a framework actually is and why they're in place around Aotearoa, that they're there to guide and help alongside te tiriti, not to instruct. I think these days we forget that Māori know tikanga Māori. They know how to implement that. And this is not a way to tell Māori how to do things Māori. It's not a way to tell Māori, oh, this is how you should do things with your land, or this is how you should do things in your urupa, but it's a way of guiding people to be able to understand and then build those relationships with Māori, because the only way, again, I believe that we're going to grow is if we can build those relationships. And that starts from coming from a place of being humble, but then also a place of learning and even going into frameworks and looking into frameworks around the rohe, around Aotearoa as well, and getting to a place where we understand those important things that come with frameworks as well.
Yeah. So in terms of how people can engage and directly with frameworks, is it, there are frameworks that have been developed, Isaac?
Yeah. So there's multiple. The one I mentioned earlier, that my mentor created, Ngā Tikanga Paihere, that's just one of many. So there's a lot of different ones that have been published, and a lot that are just being taken on by government and non-government. And then there's also a lot that are still being made and looked through. And I was lucky enough to really help with the implementation of Ngā Tikanga Paihere, but also be able to understand that this framework is a taonga, and that it should be treated like it. And that for my mentor was the biggest thing, when she realised I've done my job if the next generation coming through can see that it is a taonga. Right.
Awesome. So on to our third point around implementation, because that leads, I guess we start with education, and then in terms of framework, and then implementation of framework. Just your thoughts here.
Yeah, I think, as you've just said, the first and second point is so important. Learning, education, and then learning about the frameworks and what's out there that we can actually use to help on the projects we're doing, on the land we're working on the whenua. But then also implementation. This is the part where you act on it even more. The part where you go forward and actually step into maybe the uncomfortable zone, maybe the bit that's a little bit more out of most people's comfort zone. But yeah, I think it's always good to understand what you want from your data, or what you want from whatever you're working with, and what you're hoping to gain from that, and where that data has come from. But then also understanding that you want to do things in a way that is culturally appropriate, in a way that is going to make whoever you're working with feel respected with that data. And then again, understanding that it is different from just a line to fill up an Excel sheet or a numerical figure, that the starter is actually a tonga.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, but we definitely, I guess, from point of view, as I shared earlier, we just have this enormous gap, and so it is very encouraging to hear that these things, that in terms of frameworks and implementation planning, we're coming to more of a point, because I know there's a lot of amazing and very well formed thinking at strategic level in government in New Zealand, and but still it is taking its time to work its way into the way that we work and operationally.
And I think that'll continue to happen. The more Aotearoa grows, the more, I guess, understanding will start to come, the more education will be put out, the more resources and ability people will have to learn. And I think it's just a matter of e kaua e whakamā, don't be shy about stepping into those spaces, don't be shy about opening those conversations.
Cool. And that, again, leads perfectly into our final point around conversation. And I really, from the point of view of recognizing its ability to help us at any point in what we've described here, and even just for us in taking the step of conversation today, raising a point particular of value for Aotearoa, where we just simply want to see some change, and we want to encourage everyone to get involved, to take some time to think through what we've prepared, and take some action. And whether it is us that are the action makers and deliverers of this, and whether there's others on the call or other people who we can work with to enable, that's good. But we actually want to see this happen everywhere.
For my last statement around this, just with the last minute, I think it's important that we realise that there has been a history here in Aotearoa. There has been a lot of conversations that could have happened and that would have changed things. I think it's always important to remember that something as little as a conversation can change a whole mindset. Something as little as a conversation can bring something to life or help bring that understanding and education to something. And that's, I guess, our whakaaro around why we decided to do this today, why we decided to put it more into a conversation so that we can help not only each other learn from these sort of things, but everybody online as well.
Yeah. Perfect.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for the time. That, I guess, as well now, this was our conversation, but now it's our conversation. And we can now turn to our question and answer time. And what we'll do, just check the chat here. We do have a number of questions. And let's just see. We'll start from the top. What I guess just as a point for you all, just from this perspective here, it's Isaac and I guess, two men sharing from our perspective, and there may be particular points of view or perspective that we're not able to answer immediately today, and we may not get through all of the questions, but please be assured that we'll be in touch with you and help to try to answer that question for you. And if not us, through our mentorship networks to enable that for you. Cool. So we'll start here. Well, first question is how we're doing, and I think we're doing pretty well.
Being able to open up with this conversation today has been quite an experience. So yeah, we're doing well.
Okay, cool. Scott has just made a point here. Given the connection that Māori have with water and the environment, two areas of business focus for us, and don't know much about your organisation, but I would argue you're probably holding Māori data or data valuable to Māori. Has there been any engagement with mana whenua across New Zealand about the data you hold and what value it could provide?
Would you maybe want to touch on that one? What's your WSP?
Sure. So from a WSP perspective, Scott, we have a Māori Business Services group that have core focus of consultation with iwi, and this is vitally important in terms of future infrastructure investment activities, and it's I guess from our point of view, we're providing service that's complementary to that advisory. So it is a case for us to have more kōrero with our Māori Business Services team and be more connected at the same time. And certainly there are data assets, but in terms of what we're seeing operationally on the ground, we're not actually seeing a whole lot yet. Awesome. We look after national systems that just don't have that data.
And I think that's why these sort of conversations are so important to start and to get into, because it's opening that eye to the ability and the capability that we can see change in that. Yeah.
Cool.
I'll read out the second one. I was actually just reading it just for a second. With Macrons and systems and databases, why is this important, and do we need to be having conversations to support this implementation? I'd love to speak on this. As I've been here for just a little while now at WSP, I've worked around a lot of areas. Now, the importance of a Macron in Māori is a tohuto. The importance of it is because a word in Māori has a lot of significance. Now, with tohuto, it not only changes the pronunciation of a word, but it can also change the meaning of a word. Now, I'll give the whakaaro around the two words keke and keke. Now, one has tohuto on both the E, which is K-E-K-E, and then the other one doesn't. Now, the difference between these two kopu right there is one means cake and the other means armpit. And so with that, it is so important, especially when speaking on things that are important to Māori, that it is respectful and that it is treasured in the way we speak as well. So yes, definitely those chats need to start to come through about the importance of implementation with tohuto and adding those into our everyday life. Because it can always change the way we perceive things. Right.
And in a lot of cases with the databases that we use, there is a certain protocol or say structure type within the database fields, where accommodation of macrons requires a different definition. It requires say from if getting it more into the technical side, a change from say a variable character field to an n variable character field that enables our ability to be able to add those additional characters. And the tendency has been by design to go with whatever is most efficient, I guess, size-wise. And this is not reflective of actually what we need. So there's just some fundamental change that's needed there. Cool. Okay. Moving on to the next question. What should all of us in architecture, engineering, and construction sectors be mindful of in regards to embracing Rāraunga Matapopore further? Thanks, Dan. Good thoughts, Isaac?
I think it's first having that mindset. As we spoke about education, I think it's being open to, and I think being open to things is a mindset on its own. Having that first initial realization that, okay, this is important, this is here to stay. Māori data is a taonga, and the way we should be treating it is with respect, and the way we should be looking after. So I think initially it should be that look into how we can protect and how we can start to learn more about it. And then even our own research. It can be so important. Taking time out of your day, whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's an hour, no matter how long it can be, to start to look into frameworks and get, I guess, more of an understanding, even around learning about te tiriti or hitore history, or the treaty in Aotearoa today is so important. So I think not taking those things for granted or as little things, because having the ability to learn about that is what's going to see us change.
Cool. Thanks, Isaac.
Yeah.
Dan also touches on resource that he's using for Te Reo, the Te Aka app, and just if there are any other open public resources that you're aware of, Isaac, that you could recommend.
I know I have used Te Aka before. It was Te Aka for quite a while now, and know how awesome it is. I have forgotten off the top of my head, but if you were even to search up in the App Store or in Microsoft around Māori apps, I know there's a few that there's some new ones being put through where you can take a photo of something and it will translate it for you. I can't remember off the top of my head the name of that app, but what I'd suggest is talking to people that have more of those resources or finding the people that have that knowledge and learning from them. We can also come back to you on that, Dan, maybe with some more information around apps that are starting to be implemented, but there are a lot these days that are starting to come out, even the Pātaka app, which I know has been presented as well through stats.
Yeah. And a further question with regard to personal mentors. What would you recommend for those who don't have easy access to a mentor?
That's good. I'd say I can only speak on my own experience and my own personal way, but I think it's quite easy to go through not only life but through a workplace and not realize the capability or the people that you have around you. I think, again, having an open mindset to this, opening up and talking to people in your organization, I'd say there are people with the ability to be able to teach you on that. What I had to do was step out of my comfort zone. I mean, even to humble myself as a Māori, and having learnt as much as I'd learnt growing up from my tipuna, from my karaua, and learning from my iwi, that actually there was a point that I don't know everything. So coming to that understanding of there are people around that will know more, and then maybe even tuning into those webinars that they have all over LinkedIn, where they speak on Māori data or they speak on tikanga, and learning a little bit, and then maybe even doing something as little as messaging someone on LinkedIn, and being humble and looking, like, going from a point of view of, I'd really love to learn about this. I'd love to see this implemented through my mahi and what I did. That'd be my best answer for you.
Excellent. Okay. So Ashton asks the question, how have you found the availability of Māori data? As Aotearoa, do you feel we need to capture more information about Māori in order for us to make more informed, well-balanced decisions?
I'd love to go off this as well. I think with availability of data, it can be quite hard to find out who has those resources or who has that data, I think. And then within those places, it's still quite hard to figure out. I think definitely not. There isn't enough information out there. And I think there's been a massive growth and change over the years of starting to work very closely along iwi and with Te Tiriti and other things like that. But I think the importance is more around now those conversations where I think there's been a lot of issues, whether it be in infrastructure, whether it be in farming and agriculture, wherever it be around Aotearoa, where there was a plan to go through a project, maybe it be on Māori land, maybe it be somewhere else, but there's been plans to do things there and then no conversation had with people. Now, I think a lot of the time people can look at a data set, even with Māori data, and think, okay, there's a pattern starting to show that something isn't going right or something is changing within that land, within the kaimoana there, within whatever's going on. Now, I think it's important to realise that the kaumātua in those areas, or the locals in those areas, local iwi around wherever region you're from, have actually an understanding, not just from now what's going on in their own whenua, but dating way back. And there's patterns that they've picked up and realised as well, and would quite clearly have been able to tell people if those conversations had been asked, and if those questions had been asked, if those conversations had been had, and if those projects had been taken place in the right way, in a respectful way. So I definitely think there needs to be more availability of Māori data, more information about data, but then also more conversations had with people that have the ability to teach us and that we have the ability to learn from.
And that has a direct flow on, as I shared earlier, from a business intelligence delivery. And what we're able to provide, often we are advisors to major investors in infrastructure and in government, particularly. And without that supporting data, we're simply not able to achieve what is the best outcome for Aotearoa, and we want to see that change. I guess we will actively work through our own action plan to do what we can to see that change that we both agree exists. We've got time for one final question, and thank you all for your additional questions, which we'll cover by other communications. We'll be in touch. Where is WSP in terms of respecting or acknowledging Māori data sovereignty?
Did you maybe want to cover that on terms of WSP on behalf?
I think it's where WSP is at. There's definite recognition of the value of data and the need for us to be able to manage this in a much more careful way. That Matapopore and sovereignty are very closely tied. We want to be able to, I guess, as I shared, I think this kind of aligns to the conversation or earlier answer with regard to our business services area. So it is within our, it's certainly our desire to work more together and achieve more together through stronger digital enablement.
Awesome. Yeah, no, 100% tō tēnei. Just wanted to also point out the next comment of tō tōko tēnei kōrero and the use of tohutō actually being a demonstration of manaakitanga. I 100% agree. I think it shows your ability to not only learn but put Māori in the place of respect that they need to be when you're dealing with Māori data or whatever we're dealing with. I 100% agree with that comment. Just wanted to bring that up.
Well, we're close to time now, so just thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Thank you for your participation, your sharing of questions, and for listening in. And we encourage you to take on board what we've shared. Challenge us just as much as encourage us. We're looking to see change positively out of what we've done here today. So just to close, Isaac, could you share a closing karakia and we'll wrap up?
Whakamutunga te karakia. Kia tau. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa. Te ata whai o tō tātou ariki a i karaiti. Me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhi ngā tahitanga ki te wairua tapu. Ake, ake, ake. Āmene. Kia reita whānau.
Thank you all.
Ka kite.
Ka kite.